The Reinvention of Edison Thomas, Chapter 4, Part 1 Playing Catch Up. In the morning, Eddie could see Jim's corner from 3 blocks away. He was relieved to see that Jim wasn't there. He was safe, out of reach of the trucks that threatened him every night in Eddie's dreams. By the time Eddie reached the corner, he had counted 5 cars, out of 25 cars passing through the intersection, that did not come to a complete stop at the stop sign. A full 20% were breaking the law while kids were walking to school. How many drivers ignored the stop sign at other times of day? Eddie's nightmare stood a good chance of actually coming true. But Jim would not be the only one in danger. Children could be hurt or even killed. Eddie took a deep breath and looked left, then right, then left again. Then he looked right, then left, then right again. Then, just to be sure, he looked left, then right, and then left again. He crossed as quickly as he could. Fact number 75 from the Random Access Memory of Edison Thomas. In countries where vehicles drive on the left side of the road, including Japan and the United Kingdom, collisions are less likely than in countries where traffic keeps to the right, including the United States and France. Eddie hoped math class would be just the thing to occupy his brain enough to keep Jim away. Miss Johnson was handing back the test from Friday, and an A could always cheer him up. He liked it when she whispered, "Nice job, Eddie," to him as she handed back math homework and tests. This time she didn't say anything as she placed his test paper face down on his desk. Eddie turned the paper over. At the top, in red ink, was a big, fat B+. Eddie was stunned. He had known every answer. He checked every problem. Every answer was correct. How could he have failed to get an A? His test paper was perfect, just like his Eddie coil had been. So why didn't he get a perfect score? He looked at the paper again, trying to find a clue. Under the B+, embedded in the instructions printed at the top of the page, was a red circle. Actually, it was more of an ellipse. Around the words, "Show your work." He looked up at Miss Johnson, who was writing some equations on the board. He wanted to raise his hand and ask for clarification, but decided not to interrupt the lesson. Instead, he looked over his test continuously until the bell rang for lunch. Fact number 343 from the Random Access Memory of Edison Thomas. If the air is removed from a chamber that contains a ringing bell, the bell will no longer make a sound. Eddie got to the lunchroom in time to sit in his favorite spot in the corner. He pulled his math test out of his pocket and stared at it, trying to figure out how to show work he didn't do. "Do you mind if I sit with you?" said Justin as he sat down next to Eddie. Eddie didn't particularly feel like sitting with Justin, but he didn't say anything. He was used to sitting alone, or at least effectively alone. He was often in close physical proximity to kids at lunch, but conversations were rare. Why did Justin want to sit with him? To gloat about the fact that he was going to the regional science fair and Eddie wasn't? "That was a really tough test," said Justin, unpacking his sandwich. Eddie hadn't realized that Justin was in his class. He grunted. "Didn't you think it was hard?" asked Justin, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Not really," replied Eddie, "but I got points taken off for not showing my work." Eddie's stomach began to squirm as if a giant anaconda had been coiled up there sleeping and suddenly woke up and shifted position. Somebody in the lunchroom was eating fish. "Miss Johnson is a real stickler for showing work." Justin's mouth was full. "I know, but I showed all the work I did," protested Eddie. "I do not know how I could have shown more." "Let's have a look." Justin snatched the paper out of Eddie's hand. "Here, for instance, number 3. That was complicated. You should have written down the intermediate steps." "What intermediate steps? I wrote everything down." "Holy snap, you're not telling me you did that in your head?" Justin's mouth gaped open. Eddie could see traces of Justin's sandwich stuck between his teeth. It smelled like tuna. That explained Eddie's upset stomach. "Sure," Eddie shrugged. "How?" "I just see it in my head." "Like the numbers on a calculator?" "Not really." Eddie paused to think. He had never tried to explain how he did math. "Things just sort of grouped themselves into patterns in my head and I rearranged them. Everyone does it that way, right?" "Well, I sure don't." They ate their sandwiches in silence for a while. Eddie had peanut butter and bee vomit, as always. The smell of Justin's tuna sandwich was making him extremely queasy. He tried to think of something else, but soon he lost his appetite and set his sandwich down, just as Mitch Cooper and Will Pease approached the table. "Hey, Professor," said Will. "Can you settle a bet for us?" "Certainly," said Eddie. "What can I do for you?" "Mitch says ketchup would work better in a water pistol than mustard, but I think mustard would work better. What do you think?" "Neither one would work in a water gun. The diameter of the nozzle is too narrow. It would take too much pressure to squeeze it out. If you want, I could design a gun that would accommodate a more viscous fluid." "That would be great," said Mitch. He leaned in way too close to Eddie's face. Eddie smelled pepperoni on his breath. "Make me a ketchup gun and make Will a mustard gun. That would be better than paintball." "And tastier," added Will. "We'll see you later," said Mitch hastily, leaving a paper bag on the table in front of Eddie as he and Will walked quickly away. "What's in the bag?" asked Justin. "Did Mitch forget his lunch?" Eddie peeked into the bag. It was full of packets of the condiments that went along with the hot lunches: ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, taco sauce, and salad dressing. Eddie looked around for Mitch and Will, but they had disappeared into the lunchroom crowd. "They probably took those from," said Justin. Eddie was still thinking about the bet. Mustard, made from the seed of Brassica hirta, is more viscous than ketchup in general. Mayonnaise is probably even thicker but contains more oil. What could he use to build a ketchup gun? He would need to design a pumping mechanism that would apply more pressure than your standard water gun. It should have a longer trigger stroke but narrower plunger diameter. "Think they're so cool," continued Justin. Eddie picked up a packet and squeezed it between his fingers, feeling the ketchup gush from side to side. He tried to rip a little corner off the packet. Then he tried to bite off a corner. He hated these packets. They were always so hard to open. "You really shouldn't." Eddie squeezed the pack in his fist and felt the ketchup push back against his fingers and strain against the seams of the packet. He threw the ketchup packet down on the table and raised his fist. "Eddie!" He brought his fist down on the ketchup packet hard. As soon as he did, he knew he shouldn't have. Not only because it would make a mess, which it did, or because he would get in trouble, which he probably would, but also because of the high-pitched shriek that hurt his ears. He looked up at the source of the shriek, a red-haired girl wearing a white sweater with one ketchup-colored sleeve. Fact number 1893 from the Random Access Memory of Edison Thomas. Even though tomatoes are associated with Italian food, tomatoes are native to South America and were not introduced to Europe until the early 1500s.